What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with my favorite hour of the week. We've got ourselves the Wells Fargo Championship, another designated field, and a ton of DFS contests that are calling my name out there, that have my name on them. Gonna go out there, give it our best in these GPPs, but more excited to first off hang with my people out here, this community, which first off has just grown over the last year or so to a point where I can't even imagine, but even more so, just a bright group that of late has been on absolute heater. So you'd love to see it. Let's continue that heater this week for DFS. On the prop side, let's get a few 5-man cards over there in Prize Picks and Underdog, and let's make it one to remember. I can see a bunch of you down there in chat. We got JGA there. What's going on? Already talking about a few DMPs for Prize Picks. That is absolutely clutch. Earlier, we caught a few for baseball that we were able to use for some cards. But, hey, man, you can never have too many DMPs. So I love to see it. We'll get to that in a second. What's going on, Rob? He says, it's Tom Kim week. I love it. I'm all for it. What's going on, Mark? I'm doing pretty well. We're sipping on a little bit of a Crown and Coke here, enjoying ourselves. Already made our lineups for tonight. Consumed more content for PGA DFS this week than I ever have before. Really grinded this week. I'm looking forward to this really big field. There were a ton of people grinding content and wanted to make sure the ownership projections were going to be perfect. So I'm pretty proud of what I put together. Patrick Rogers equals Prize Picks Employee of the Month. Could not agree more. That guy was an absolute god on Sunday when it came to fairways. This, that, and the other thing says, what's good, Luke Steeny? I love the little nickname there. It says, do you like Michael Kim, Sibu Kim, Tom Kim, and Sunjay Im? All in the same lineup. Yeah, I like what you're doing there. A little theme to lineup for sure. They're all ball strikers, though. Of those players, I believe I'm on 3 of the 4. So, yeah, I don't hate it. What's going on, Young? You said you're convinced Tommy Fleetwood will finish top 10. I could see it. It's his kind of golf course. I'm there, too. That's for sure. And we got Matt saying, thoughts on Gary Woodland and Batia? I like both of them. I really like the ball striking acumen for both of them. And Gary Woodland, it's his kind of golf course. So he's somebody I actually talked about as a value play in one of my videos. But Batia, similar kind of player. So yeah, let's hop into it, boys. So let's go ahead, share our screen. And what we're going to do here is hop right into the weather because if you guys didn't know, we didn't play at Quail Hollow last year, right? The President's Cup was at the Quail Hollow Club, but this tournament, the Wells Fargo Championship, was over there at TPC Potomac. So on Data Golf, there's no metrics to go off of. We're going to look at stats, which we will later for the prop side. We're going to have to look at 2021. And then the year before that, believe it or not, is not 2020. They did not play this in 2020 due to COVID. We got to go the whole way back to 2019. So when you're looking at course history, tournament history, just please keep that in mind, right? Last year, 2022, this event was not at Quail Hollow. So I've already had a ton of questions like prop-wise about some of the averages last year. Well, completely throw those out the window, right? When you're looking at modeling, when you're looking at some of the top 5, top 10 finishers, right? The fact that Max Homa, quote unquote, won this event last year, right? Doesn't really mean all that much. So just keep that in mind if you didn't already know that. I'm sure most of you out there already did. But if we're looking at the weather, I don't see much of an edge to be had. So this is Windfinder, which I'll say is the slapdick of all slapdicks when it comes to some of this analysis, but worth looking at because they do break it down via wind gusts and sustained winds. And you can see on both days, it's a similar wind profile, right? In the mornings, lower sustained winds in the afternoon. On Thursday, it does look like it'll be relatively flat. Both waves in similar wind conditions. Obviously the advantage for most rounds, right, pretty much no matter what course you're at on the PGA Tour, is that the morning guys are going to have receptive greens, also more pristine greens. So I expect that to be the case on Thursday, maybe a slight advantage to the morning guys. And then over here on Friday, it's pretty much the same thing, right? In the morning, you can see it's slightly gustier there for maybe like the first hour or so, but by the afternoon, it calms down. They're going to have slightly crustier greens that afternoon. So I'm expecting both days to be really consistent. I mean, I think that the scoring average might be within like 0.1, maybe 0.15 shots each day in terms of your scoring average. So if you're playing Showdown, I don't even think you have to only play AM guys. I mean, sure, maybe shade that direction, that kind of thing. But at least as of right now, fingers crossed, and I prefer this kind of situation to a crazy weather situation. You can kind of ignore the weather, right? If you want to be bold. Go out there, maybe stack one wave or the other, just hoping that something crazy happens with the weather. Maybe go ahead and do that in 10, 15% of your lineups. But outside of that, nothing crazy that I think has to be done. We go over here to Willy Weather, which in my opinion is a little bit more consistent, a little bit more accurate with these weather predictions. The weather station's also a little bit closer to Quail Hollow Club, which is helpful with this. On Thursday, you can see they're calling for pretty flat weather in the morning, slightly lower sustained winds in the afternoon. And then over here on Friday, pretty much flat, right? Like 5 miles an hour pretty much the entire day. So I guess if you were looking for any sort of crazy little small advantage, right, you might say that the morning tomorrow might be the wave to go after. But a lot of people out there will argue that the PM AM stack has an inherent advantage because, you get to finish around there on Thursday and then immediately go out there Friday and carry over that momentum, right? You'll hear that from a lot of players, a lot of DFS analysts out there. So maybe there's a 0.1 shot advantage, right, to these morning guys here on Thursday. That's how small the margin is here, right? I'm talking like a 1/10 of a shot advantage, something like that. It might go away, right? Because those PM/AM guys have that psychological advantage going. So to me, it's a toss-up, right? I'm not stacking one wave or the other, and I'm somebody that's playing 150 lineups. I'm not even taking 10, 15% of them and stacking them in one direction or the other because it looks like a true 50-50 prospect at this point. So I'm going to keep an eye on it tonight. Obviously, in the morning, I wake up before lock. I'll take a last-second look at the weather, make sure that nothing's crazy going on. But as of right now, looks like a pretty easy slate from that perspective. Let's bring up our projections, and we're going to cycle into ownership here. So we'll open it up to questions at this point. We'll start talking through some of the players here. But what I'm highlighting this week is going to be the ownership tab, and it's something that I feel pretty proud about this week. I think I've put more time into my ownership this week than I have any other week. And a lot of it is because of the field strength. I really like Quail Hollow. I've been there 3 of the last 5 years. It's I honestly might go up there for the weekend. We'll touch on that later. I've had an itch to book a trip all week. I'll tell you guys that much. But I've looked at so much content this week. I've consumed pretty much everything out there. So I feel like I have a pretty good read on what the ownership's going to look like tomorrow morning. So I have that on there for you. That'll be free. Normally it's behind the paywall, of course, on my Patreon page. And we'll talk through some of the implications. But before we do so, let's go through chat. Let's see what's going on down there. We've got 40 people down there. Smash that like button if you're in here. It goes a long way with helping me grow the channel. Appreciate you guys out there. For stray tee shots, is Webb's house in play? Yeah, he's on hole number 7. So if you guys saw my course breakdown, I talked about those magnificent houses down the right side of the par 5. He lives in one of those. So lucky guy, lives in an absolute beauty of a house. Young Takeoff says, what's your favorite prop you've seen on Prize Picks? Under 72 for Corey Connors. We'll talk about a few of them I like towards the end of the video. But yeah, if I had to pick one off the top of my head, it's probably the under 72 for Corey Connors. What are my thoughts on Trey Molnax? And I like the skill set fit. So he's towards the bottom of the board. He's super cheap. Last time I checked, he was like $6,500, right? Something along that line. Let's see, where you at, good old Trey? Not that cheap. All right, let's do the good old Control F function. That's why it's there. All right, there, $6,400. You're getting what you're paying for. An out-of-form golfer that fits the golf course. So I'm for it in low, small quantities, right? I'm not talking about a single entry kind of build. But if you're in a large field GPP, you're talking about 3-4%, then I'm all for it, JGA. I'll be there myself. Kevin Smith, what's going on? He says, hey, Luke, do you like Dylan Wu and Will Gordon for top 20? I do. I really like Will Gordon. Good fit, just like last week at Vedanta Vallarta. And then Dylan Wu has been in form, especially when you look at the advanced metrics with the long irons. Is top 70, I believe, in all of the long iron categories this year, which, if it was 1-2 categories, might be able to say that's noise, but it's all 4 of those long iron categories. So I like both of them. I like them for DFS too. So good calls there, Kevin. Smash that like button. I love it. Absolutely. Let's get it rolling, right? And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content. We will be doing showdown live streams of rounds 2 through 4. So not sure when the round's going to end. It's typically like 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, right? It's where, sundown's going to happen right around then. So I'm assuming we're going to go live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So set your reminders for that. What about the cooler temperatures? Might make the course play a little bit longer. I have heard that it's been a little bit moist in the area over the last few weeks as well. So all of that is going to further extend, the course, add to the advantage that some of those bombers are going to have. So much like last week at Mexico, I'm targeting those long players, the guys that have that advantage off of the tee. And I think that cooler, moist conditions like they've had only exacerbates that, only adds to it. Saturday, they're calling for rain all day. Yep, that would, honestly, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Chris is fading Rory. Couldn't blame you. He's one of those high-owned plays. Yeah, we'll talk about the ownership here in a second. There's a whole list of guys that are prime candidates for a fade. He's on it, right? And Petrini says Putnam or Dumpy Bow as a last man in. That's tough, right? I would say Dumpy Bow. I mean, he's played decently over the last 3-4 events. Last week, the ball striking was on point. Decent long iron player. Have to say that about Bow. And he's longer than Andrew Putnam. So, yeah, it's Dumpy Bow for me. I'm not a huge Putnam guy, I have to say. I'm kind of biased against him. Thoughts on Big Dick Rick this week? I'm with it. Let's look at the ownership. So I think it's a good segue here, Brant. We'll hop back into chat here in just a few minutes. But yeah, up top, ownership's a huge thing this week. And you're going to hear every tout regurgitate the same thing. Don't play the chalk, so on and so forth. Well, I've had a huge mindset change when it comes to DFS over the last 2, maybe 2.5 months, where I've started to embrace the chalk a little bit more. And it's not that I'm looking at the higher owned players and I'm taking them and using them in my lineups, right? That's about the most backwards type of thinking that you could possibly have. But going into the week, especially on a Monday, I identify my guys, right? I go through my modeling process, look at the pricing, I figure out the guys that I want to jam into lineups. And if on Wednesday they end up being chalk, I don't talk myself off of them. I haven't done so for the last 2.5 months. The 1 or 2 times that I have, Matt Kuchar was one of those times and he finished in the top 3. I have really, really regretted my decision. And outside of that, I've had one of the better 2-month stretches that I've had on Draftkings for quite some time. And a lot of it is because I'm just playing my guys. So this week, there are a few pieces of Mega Chalk that are out there, right? My advice would be to play your guys, right? If 1 or 2 of your quote unquote guys are the chalk this week, then play them, right? And those other pieces that are 20 to maybe 25% owned, fade them, right? So for example, of the, let's say 4 or 5 guys that are quote unquote mega chalk this week, I'm playing 3 of them. There are 2 of them, one of which I talked about in my fades video, right? Patrick Cantlay, that I'm not playing this week. Just because somebody's 25% owned does not mean they're a bad play, right? Tony Finau last week, John Rahm last week, Steven Yeager, Patrick Rogers, Ben Martin, all of these guys got a ton of ownership that we played on the channel. Will Gordon, Akshay Bhatia, right? All those players were chalk last week, right? And all finished top 15. So the point is that ownership matters, right? When you're taking, let's say, a Rory McIlroy, who I'm playing this rate, is going to be chalky, right? Victor Hovland or Cameron Young, right? Those are the 3 that come to mind. These are 3 of actually the 3 highest owned players on the entire slate right there. Maybe you don't take them together, right? A role that I have set in my optimizer is to play at most 2 of the 3, right? That's a real easy way to fix it, because if you're doing so, it's going to force you to take at least 1 pivot, because almost every other player that I'm taking in this range is average to lower ownership, right? Guys like a Ricky, guys like a Jason Day, who I talked up as a sleeper play. We have Sam Burns down here, who's actually a little bit higher ownership, right? He's nearly 13%. So it's not like he's super mega low owned, but I know Rob talked about it before. I love Tom Kim at 8.9% ownership. Even if I'm taking 2 of those 3, there are tons of pivots that I'm mixing in, right? So it's about handling that ownership, right? You should not start your lineup with Rory, then Victor Hovland, and then Cameron Young. I think all 3 of them are the best plays on the slate. Like, let's be honest. Like, there's a reason why everyone has talked them up this week, right? They're really good value for their price tag. They fit the course and they're coming in on form, right? That's why a lot of people are getting to those sort of plays. Just don't take them together, right? If you take 2 of the 3, it's still manageable in terms of ownership. You can get leverage in that mid-tier to lower tier range. And even in the biggest of GPPs, right? I'm playing in the 71,000 entry contest this week. I'm going to feel okay about that. So, up top, let's say if you hate Rory this week, make him one of your fades. That's real easy, right? Then just play Patrick Cantlay. Cantlay has been unbelievable with the ball striking of late, right? Personally, I worry about his Bermuda grass around the green and putting numbers. So That's why I'm going the other direction. But, I couldn't fault you for fading to Rory McIlroy. Down here in this 9K range, I could see fading Hovland, right? You going, you know what? I really like, let's say, Sanjay around him. And I really like, let's say, like Fitz, right? If you want to play those two instead of Victor Hovland, okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. Even down here with the Cameron Young, and I really like Young this week, right? He's my pick to win here. So I'm a little bit biased, of course. Okay, fade Cameron Young, right? Take, let's say, like the three guys around him, because that's how highly owned he is, right? I'm at 22.9% right now. I couldn't blame you, right? But you don't have to fade all of them. I'll tell you that much, right? You don't have to fade Young, Hovland, Cantlay, and Rory. You don't have to fade all four of them. I think fading just one of them would be okay, right? Because again, I'm playing three of the four, right? And I think you can get away with that. So you're going to hear every tout, and I think it's just becoming this whole group thing at this point where people are overthinking the shit about DFS. There are just good plays, right? And like in other sports like NBA, NFL DFS, for example, like people realize that they just play the good plays. In PGA DFS, you have to be willing to play some of that good chalk, right? Like, look at the last 3-4 weeks on tour. There's been at least like 120+% owned guy in the winning lineup every single time, right? So if you're fading all of the guys over 20%, you're just asking to donate money every week on DraftKings. And like, you might hit like one time a year, right? But even then, all of those contrarian donkeys that are doing the same thing as you're then playing against. Like, you're no longer in the tiny minority if you're playing that way. Is I guess the point that I'm trying to make. We've looked at that on some of our review streams over the last few weeks, over the last few months at this point, we've been looking at it. People are really playing the weather edges, which it makes sense, right? There's an inherent edge to it, but ownership numbers are reflecting that. And then when you look at some of the numbers with like pivots, right? In higher dollar contests, they're like no longer pivots. Like, great example was John Rahm in main contest was like 45% owned, a few weeks ago there at Mexico Open. And some of the higher dollar single entries, like the smaller field stuff, like 20 to like 30 entry contests, it was like 25-30% owned. Like, he was way lower owned than that. Like there's a lot of overthinking that happens. I just want to say that. So rant aside, all that to say, there's chalk that you should and chalk that you should avoid this week. Just pick your spots, pick your guys, and move on. Let's catch up on chat. I'm sure there's a few questions at this point. Prize Picks is in my stream, I'm sure. That's for damn sure. We need drinking games for the live chat. That'd be fun. Can't make it up. Corey Connors just got bumped to 71.5. Yeah, he was on my Prize Picks for quite some time. So maybe it was some of the action that came in from me mentioning it. But yeah, it's been there for a while. But it wouldn't surprise me if, like Young said, they're in the chat. Smash the like button. I love it. Love it there, Doc D. Appreciate the support. Love you some Tommy Fleetwood this week. I'm there with you. That's for damn sure. Constant says, Victor will fall apart. Mentally can't handle so many first-round loan leads. Okay. All right. That's your take on it. That's okay. Mark says, would you play Rory, Hovland, and Young together in a single entry? I would not, Mark. I would leave it at 2 of 3. Even in single entries where you can definitely get away with it, you're just, I don't like having 3-on-3s. And even in like a 100, 200 entry contest, you're going to have like 40, 50 people that start with those 3 players. So it's just, to me, 2 of 3 seems like the right number. If you fade the full 10K range and above, it's like giving up too much win equity. I'd say it's viable because there's a lot of these like 8 and 9K guys that have really good track records around this course that I think are live to win. I think when you're fading the 10K range and you can get into trouble is when it's like a clear situation like Finau Rahm, right? Like that week, I would say, yeah, you're giving up too much win equity, right? When John Rahm, Tony Finau are like, at least in my opinion, like a shoe-in to win the golf tournament. Like that's the way I felt about it last week. That's the way that it ended up panning out last week. Completely different situation this time around. So no, I don't think you're crazy for doing that at all. I don't think you're giving up too much win equity, especially because I think a lot of those 9K options could easily steal this tournament. Max Homa comes to mind, right? Won here in the past. Or even some of those 8K guys, like a JT for going out there and playing Cam Young. Fade chalk, plug all 7K guys, real different. Yeah, you could do that. That's always an option. That's not my preferred strategy this week. It's just too strong of a field for that. Thoughts on Toasty? He's my fade. So I talked him up in my fades video earlier today. I think that being 10 times higher owned than the guys around him, 3 times higher owned than a Cameron Champ, you can see literally 10 times higher owned than a Matthew NeSmith here. like 4 times higher owned than Jimmy Walker, 5 times higher owned than Pearson Cootie is ludicrous, right? When you look at it from a percentages standpoint, I just don't understand why he's getting that sort of steam. He's never played in this sort of field before. And there's a huge difference between the ball striking at this course and then what you had at the Mexico Open, right? You can't miss left to right here. You're in the trees. You're pitching out sideways. The green's so much more difficult than what he's used to on the Korn Ferry Tour. I think he's missing the cut this week. So, I'm not a huge fan of Toasty. And you know, I think there's a difference between chalk down low and then chalk, quote unquote, chalk up top, right? Chalk up top is like Victor Hovland, Rory McIlroy, some of the best players in the world, right? When somebody's 10, 15 times higher owned and it's in the 6K range and it's like Alejandro Toasty, who nobody even knew existed until last week, that's just a little bit more egregious to me, right? Than some of these guys up top. Like, I'll eat the guys that are super chalky up here in the 9 and 10K range, but I won't do so in the 7K range. That's for damn sure. If somebody's going to be mega chalk in the 7K range, count me out. I went absolutely nothing of it. And in the 6K range, it's even more egregious to me. So, so not the biggest fan, to be honest. Mark says, I think the only 2 players over 28 to 1 this season are Moore and Kurt Kitayama. I wish I was on those 2. Damn. But I like Kurt this week. And this week, Mark, I think that continues. I think you see one of those top end options winning. What would Jack Nicklaus in his prime cost in DFS? Probably like 12.5. And honestly, given how dominant he was, maybe even 13.5, it'd be extremely expensive. For multiple MMEs or single entries, do you play the same lineups? For my single entry contest, I usually play in like 2-3 of them. I play the same lineup. Now, if it's a major, I'm playing like 5-6 single entries. I may play 2 different lineups and run them about even in terms of my exposure, but typically it's just 1 single entry and then my set of 150. And sometimes that single entry lineup isn't even in my set of 150, but I would say a majority of the time that it is. Cam Champ making the cut. I hope so. I'm playing him this week. Yeah, I agree on Toasty Fade. Yeah, like if he was 2% owned, like I think I'd be more for it. Looking back at guys who played last week and are playing this week, I have a bad slice and could hit those fairways. How much can we really apply from last week? I don't think that much. I think if you're looking at last week's numbers, you're going to be, sorely disappointed, right? That's why I don't like Toasty this week, for example. It was so much easier. It's a resort style course. 40, 50 yard wide fairways. You even hit some of the fairways that were out there at Vedanta. You're going to be in the trees this week, right? Around Quail Hollow. And I can tell you, as somebody that's been on property a whole bunch, played the golf course, it's absolutely impossible to hit the greens when you get into the center of some of those wooded areas. So yeah, I worry about some of the guys that just sprayed it off the tee last week. So if they're not an accurate and long driver, right, and they happen to play good last week, that maybe don't look into it too much. Like Tony Finau, for example, has had some issues with his driving accuracy over the last few months. I think that's why he kind of fell off a little bit before his win over there at the resort style course. He also tends to love pass palm. That's why we played him last week. That's why I was so high on him there. Don't know if I like him so much this week. It's just, I don't think it's the same kind of course. What's going on, Bruce? He says, how much of last week do you think will play in with Rye or Daffy? So yeah, I'm on Daffy. I think the ownership is going to be a lot lower on those players because of that. Let's see, where's MJ? I know he's super cheap this week. Yeah, $6,700, 1.2% owned. And the other one was Aaron Rye. I know he's more expensive. Yeah, Aaron Rye, love the off the tee and the approach numbers, right? He's only 2.5% owned. So I don't worry about it all that much, right? Golf's a volatile sport. Shit happens. I mean, even the best golfers can have just dreadful performances from time to time. Or like Rory McIlroy missing the cut at the Masters Players Championship. That's just not going to happen often, right? Those are both courses that he historically kills. Yeah, I don't worry about it that much. And if anything, it makes them pretty solid plays because the ownership is a little bit lower than it should be. So let's go through a few plays that I want to point out here. Top end range, love our core plays. I'm on Rory. We already talked about Hovland and somebody like Cameron Young. Sleeper plays, I think you got to consider Jason Day, Sam Burns. Burns getting a little bit of late steam, but it's well-deserved. Really good course fit. Loves these Poa Tribolus greens. Slightly worried about the vertigo that Jason Day has walked into of late. But in the past, I just want to point this out. Jason Day has had bouts of vertigo 1 week and then one the next. And it's not like it happens like once or twice. That's happened like 5 times in his career. So if you're new to the sport of golf, just forewarning, Jason Day is very frustrating when it comes to trying to, trust his health, trying to figure out whether he's going to be actually able to play or not. You almost have to play him blindly and be okay with him, like withdrawing due to vertigo, that sort of thing. He's won at this course before. Last 36 round baselines, he's like literally the second best player in this field. I'm all for it this week. So love myself some Jason Day. And because of some of the vertigo stuff that came out today, I lowered his ownership from about 14% down to just 10.9%. So he's even more so a pivot than he was before. Like I said, Sam Burns' ownership is right around the same number that he was before because of a little bit of the late steam. A few other players to point out here. Corey Connors getting a little bit of, attention as well. Keith Mitchell, a little bit more chalky than he was when I talked him up before. So, kind of like I said with picking my guys, I'm not going to talk myself off of plays just because of ownership. If they were my guy before, I'm going to play them, but I'm going to work around them, right? I'm going to make sure that I'm not pairing them with two of those top three chalky players. So, for example, with Keith Mitchell, if I'm taking two of those top three chalky guys, let's say we started with Rory, then we went Cam Young as our second man in, I would not play Keith Mitchell, right? Because that would be three really chalky players in the same lineup, right? And I almost want to limit that to two. So when I'm going in there and, I built my lineups earlier, those four players were in the same group. And I said at most two of them. Those are, he's really the only super chalky guy in this range that I even have in my player pool to begin with. So outside of that, it's a ton of pivots. I guess Gary Woodland getting a little bit of late steam too. He's at 11.6% now, but it's doable. It's nothing egregious there on good old Gary. The ball striking numbers have been next level on him. If you haven't seen my breakdown on it, let's look at the last 12 measured rounds. 0.8 strokes off the tee, 0.7 strokes per round on approach. Just everything you want from somebody in this 7K range at a ball strikers kind of golf course. Look at that. Perfect timing, Jack. Said, you're just looking at Gary Woodland's stats and you think he's going to pop soon. Yeah. I mean, that putter, it is one of the worst putters out there. It's not Luke List level when it comes to performance, but yeah, dude, if it pops, he's winning, right? It's looking like that right now, Jack. So I'm going to be on him, especially at a course that fits him perfectly. What about Patrick Rogers? Pere God. Oh boy. I think I'm fading him out of spite. Legitimately just not playing him this week because I don't like him. Played him last week. He paid off beautifully there at the Mexico Open. In fact, to my detriment prop-wise there on Sunday, which of course is what you're talking about there. But yeah, it should be a good fit for him, right? The recent form has been pretty crazy for him. I'm avoiding him. Maybe it's spite. Who knows? Yeah, he's not going to be in my player pool, that's for sure. Let's move down a little bit further. There's a lot of guys in this bottom end of the 7K range that I'm taking shots on. And of course, those are on my Patreon. I can't give you guys every play I'm getting to, but it's all these long iron specialists, guys that can just bang it from 175 and beyond. So Adam Scott comes to mind. He's one of those kind of players. Kurt Kitayama, right? Value play. He's one of those sort of players. Sam Stevens, Pat Mayo talked him up a little bit. So he's getting a little bit of ownership too, but that's okay. Really good long iron player. Completely on board with Pat on that one for sure. Akshay, same thing. Really good long iron player. Just the guys I'm focusing on from $7,500 and below are low owned players that are really good with those long irons, because you're not going to find a ton of bombers down here. I mean, there's a little stretch here. Let's see, from Will Gordon down to Svensson, right? This Gordon, List, Bramlett, Ryan, Svensson pairing, all of them are really good off the tee. I'm playing all of them this week. It's just, I know it seems quote unquote lazy to go out there and try and just pick the guys that fit the course, but you have to remember that I'm playing in a large field GPP, and my desired outcome is a lot different than a lot of you out there that might be trying to min cash, right? Or are playing single entries and just want to finish in the top 25%, cash lineups that just want to finish in the top 50%, right? My desired outcome is to have the absolute nuts, and something that I think a lot of players out there just don't consider. And I almost don't even want to talk about this too much because it's my edge when it comes to playing these contests, especially for NBA, that sort of thing, is you have to have players that can actually hit the nuts, right? There's a difference between somebody finishing top 20 down here in the 6K range and then them being the nuts play that's top 5, right? By the nuts play, I'm talking about Cam Champ last week, right? I'm talking about Akshay Bhatia up top. I'm talking about those guys that finished in the actual top 5, top 10, top 5, top 7 of fantasy scoring that you need in that 70,000 entry contest to win, right? And the fact of the matter is that there are certain players based on their skill set that literally can't do that, that literally can't finish top 5, top 10 in this field. That a lot of it's off the tee based. A lot of your potential is capped off the tee. And at a course like this, that it's almost like there's a height limit for like the roller coaster, right? It's like it's hit the ball this far or else you can't ride the roller coaster, right? It's kind of like that around Quail Hollow, where it's like you hit it this far or you're not finishing in the top 5, top 10. Look at the leaderboards for the last 3 years. There are, let's say, like maybe 5 examples of players that are in, like, let's say below the tour average in terms of their distance that finished in the top 10. Abraham Answer is one of them. He's on Live Now. Joel Damon is one of them that really sticks out as one of those players. He's obviously in the field this week. Maybe you play him, right? Because he's been able to break the mold. Outside of that, I can't even think of them off the top of my head. There's been less than a handful of examples over the last 3-4 years. It's been, you have to at least be, I'd say, average in terms of your distance. I don't think you don't have to be an elite tier distance player. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're one of those really short plotters, I have no interest in you this week. I just want to point that out. And long iron play is something that really couples along with that. That's how I'm further filtering down my pool, is I'm also looking for the guys that are above average off the tee in terms of the distance, and then really good long iron players. And then I think you have a solid DFS play. So Matt Wallace fits that description. We talked about those off the tee gods right there. Guys like Lee Hodges, right? He's a striper of the golf ball. Dylan Wu, I think, is one of the best plays on the slate. He's getting a little bit of steam, but he's only 3% owned. So, like, unlike a Toasty, we know who Dylan Wu is, right? We've seen him in similar strength fields, and he's held up pretty well. So I'm still willing to get there, unlike a Toasty. Let's see. Austin Smotherman, striper. Cameron Champ, I'm going right back to the well. I'm going to piss off so many people saying this. I am playing Dylan Fratelli once again. I do not give a shit if you disagree with the fact that he's a good player. Look at his track record. Like, once every couple months, he finishes top 10. And $6,200, a top 10, top 15. Hell, maybe even like a tied for 18th place finish for Dylan Fratelli this week, given how many birdies the damn guy makes when he's out there, might end up getting you into the optimal lineup. So, yes, I'm playing Dylan Fratelli. Even for all the haters can suck on it. Russell Knox, another one of those flyers, just going after long iron players that are long off the tee. Now, I have to say this, right? Russell Knox not long off the tee, but he is capable of gaining off the tee because of how accurate he is. So, in the 6K range, you're getting what you're paying for. I mean, Dylan Fratelli is just like, he's probably missing the cut by 10 strokes this week. Let's be completely honest about him. They're at $6,200, but he also, like I said, every couple months, every 3-4 months, 2-3 months. I don't. It's not very often for Fratelli, but when he pops, boy, does he pop, and you have to have him. And again, I'm playing the long game, right? I'm willing to take those missed cuts by 10 strokes. It's just something that's going to happen with him. That's for damn sure. Molinax, right? I know somebody asked about him before. He fits that ball striking mold I'm looking for. Grayson Sig, right? Another one of those ball strikers. Let's see, where's Davis Thompson, right? Davis Thompson, $6,600. Just a striper of the golf ball. The kind of guy that I'm trying to play here around the Quail Hollow Club. Let's catch up on questions, and then afterwards, we're going to go through some cash plays and a few lineups together. What kind of bankroll do you think guys like McLovin have? 10, 25 mil. I'm sure if you look at their action, you could probably figure it out. I haven't looked at it though, Chris. If I had to put a guess on it, it's at least a couple mil. They probably don't have like 10, 25 mil just sitting on their DK account, but I could see them having like 2.5 million, something like that. I'm sure it's crazy though, Chris, especially like what they have off of Draftkings. Thoughts on Clark and Buckley? I think they're getting a little bit of attention, but it's well-deserved. Both are solid ball strikers. Let's see, over the last 36 rounds, let's go up to Wyndham Clark, who's been fantastic, making almost every cut, gaining across the board. All for it. He's a solid fit at any course, right? If you're gaining across the board. Let's see, Hayden Buckley, losing around the green, but gaining a bunch off the tee. I guess the issue with Buckley is that he gains off the tee because of how many fairways he hits. Not so much because he's a bomber, but I'm okay with it. I don't think it's a terrible play. Tanner says, any thoughts on Kirk? I worry about the long iron play. If you look at some of his like 175 yard plus buckets, they're not the best. Does Fitt's newfound distance bring him into the mix? It does. And of course, him winning at the RBC. And I think a lot of people probably didn't notice how good he was at the Zurich Classic. He was absolutely carrying him and his brother's team. So yeah, I think he's definitely in play. I have to say I'm avoiding him, Mark, but I don't feel great about it. He's a really good course fit, so could not talk you off of him. Travis says, how would you suggest narrowing a 50-plus player pool for 150 max down to a 20 max? Just pick your guys, right? Take maybe your top 16 to 20 players and go in that direction. That's what I would do, especially if you have 50-plus guys that you really like. I mean, just you got to narrow it down, right? Depending on how many lineups you're playing. If you're playing 150, you can afford to play all of those kind of players. If you're not, well, you probably can't do so. Let me bring up Draftkings. I didn't have it up beforehand. Slappy move on my part. Let's get this Rainmakers crap off the screen and share it so you guys can see what I'm looking at. There we are. And okay, we're going to talk through some strategy here. So if you have any questions, still feel free to go ahead and fire them. We'll get back to them here in a second. But what I want to focus on now from the content perspective, it would be like my top cash plays. So if you're playing in cash, let me just throw them on the board here. McIlroy, Cantlay. Let's throw Hovland in there. Let's throw GT. Let's throw Cam Young. And this isn't a lineup, by the way. This is just me tossing in my top 6 cash plays. And let's put Keith Mitchell in there with this course history. You should be taking at least 3 of these players in your cash lineup. And obviously, it can't be the top 3 in terms of your pricing, right? Or else you're going to be screwed in terms of your price tag. But maybe you start with Cantlay. Maybe your second man in is JT. Your third man in, let's say, is a Cameron Young. And you're left with $7,300 remaining. Maybe you'd be a little bit less aggressive in this 8K range and you take, I don't know, Keith Mitchell as your third man in. Well, now you have $7,600 remaining, and it's relatively simple to figure out the last 3 spots, right? You take maybe 1 pivot, 2 more guys that are relatively chalky, and you got yourself a cash build for the week. So I think it's pretty straightforward. The chalk this week, I think, is worthy chalk, and even chalk than fading like a Patrick Cantlay, right? I don't love the Bermuda grass stuff, but like he's been striping it of late. Like I understand why he's getting the steam that he is. Like it makes sense to me. So in cash, take the pieces of chalk that you think you're going to get there and fill out the rest of your lineup with guys there in the 7K range. That would be my advice to you. If we're looking at GPP lineups, just to go through my thought process, if I'm going out there and let's say making a GPP lineup by hand, which I never do, right? It's almost always going to be in an optimizer. Let me show you how I would handle that chalk. So let's say I'm starting with a Rory. Let's say my second man in is going to be a Cam Young. Well, this is going to corner me into an ownership scenario that's less than ideal, right? Like I said, I'm not going to put 3 of these chalky plays in the same lineup. So I pretty much by no means would start with these 3 players together, right? A Rory, Cam Young, and Hovland. Heck, I would have a hard time even starting with those 2 and then getting down here to a Keith Mitchell. Ownership, I'm going to have a 3-on-3 versus at least a couple thousand people in that 70,000 entry contest. And I'm taking pivots in the 7K range. You could make it work. It's just not a situation that you want to be in very often, right? If you're hand building your set of 150, then maybe you could build a few lineups like this, but you'd have to be forcing in guys that are sub 2% owned at pretty much all 3 spots to ensure that first off, you're not going to duplicate yourself, but furthermore, to get the leverage that you need on the field to take down a 70,000 entry contest. So it's sub-ideal, right? If I'm starting with these 2 sort of players in the 7K range, I'm trying to find some kind of pivot. So let's see. Tom Kim, I think, would be a prime example there, right? Taking somebody that's sub 10% owned. We're at $7,200 remaining. Trying to take a pivot here in the 7K range, I think makes sense. Webb Simpson kind of makes sense at this golf course. He lives on the course, like I said. That puts you at $7,300. Now I'm feeling a lot more comfortable about this lineup, right? We have the 2 pivots in there. We're at $7,300. Don't go crazy with ownership, and we've got ourselves a GPP lineup. So that's what I was mentioning before, which is handling the chalk. For me, let me just put the 4 players on there, because like I'm playing these 4 chalky players, and I really don't care. Let's see. Let's get Keith Mitchell on there. Of these 4 players, I'm playing at most 2 in the same lineup, and that's how I'm handling it. Because outside of that, I'm not taking any super mega chalky players. And from a total ownership perspective and from a product ownership perspective, I'm looking at pretty solid lineups. If I was playing in a single entry, I know we got the question about it before. I know Mark was asking if you could play them all together. So go with, like, let's say a McIlroy, a Hovland, and then a Cam Young. You could. It's just you really have to take pivots down low, right? So up here in the 7K range, like, you're forcing in a pivot. Like, you're just trying to find low ownership. Like Seamus Power, like, would be like a forced low owned play. At the $7,000 mark, like an Adam Shank, like, you're just the three players that you have to match up with them. Just they don't feel great. Like, I'm willing to play them this week. They're in my GPP pool. They're just, when you're putting a lot of money behind the lineup, you're playing a single entry, which is a higher percentage of your exposure week to week, or at least typically is, right? I'm playing $5 lineups, and then my single entry is like a $300 lineup, right? Like, it's a pretty sizable portion of my portfolio week to week. So personally, right, I'm not going to take crazy shots unless I have a pretty good reason for doing so on them. So that would be my advice from that perspective. Let's catch up on chat. Let's bring back up the projections. And then afterwards, we're going to hop into prop stuff. So if you have any DFS questions, go ahead and fire them in chat right now. Afterwards, we're going to be talking about some prize picks and underdog stuff. Where are we at? Wimby Cash, struggling below Mitchell with a core with Rory, Young, Keith. Any thoughts? Yeah, so the core after that, it's wide open, right? Because you're going to be in the 7K range, right? You can't even force yourself back up to the high sevens. There's not a lot of chalk that you'd want to force in. I like Kurt Kitayama. Right? I like these ball strikers that I'm really sold on. Let's see, like a Gary Woodland, if you can fit him into that kind of lineup, I really like for that kind of build. That's what I would be targeting for the most part, would be the ball strikers that I'm actively jamming into lineups. And those two really come to mind. Luke, do you think being overweight Harry Higgs is a good play, or should he clean up his diet? I think he should live how he wants to. That's what I say about good old Harry. If he wants to enjoy his food, all the power to him. Cheers is what I say. Thoughts on Thigala? I love Thigala this week, and I don't think you're going to be alone in liking him. I think a lot of people are going to get to him at $8,200. He's a strong player pretty much at any course. He's made like 20-something straight cuts. He's an extremely well-rounded player. He's shown an ability to pop in all four categories. And I think when he's winning a tournament, which it's going to happen this year, I'm pretty sold on that. It's going to be when he marries two, maybe three of those skill sets together, right? There's weeks where he gains 4 or 5 strokes off the tee, times where he gains 4 or 5 strokes on the greens. The iron play is a little bit sporadic too, right? Just get a week where you pop with 1 or 2 of those categories at the same time, and you've got the recipe for a really good week. So $8,200, I'm all for it. I do think the ownership, it has creeped up a little bit as the week has gone on. I had him single-digit owned for quite some time, and now he's 10.7%, but nothing to get me off of him. I'll definitely be well over the field. Taylor Moore, top 10 chances. I like it. Honestly, I have to say, we're going to learn a lot about him over the next few weeks. He's taken his game to another level. It could be a little bit of a heater, could just be, a stretch of solid ball striking form that has carried him to all of these top finishes, or he might be a consistent moneymaker, might be a bread maker out there on the PGA Tour that we see out there for quite some time. So I have to say, Jack, I'm not sure which one it is, whether he's one of those elite tier ball strikers or whether he's a one-hit wonder, as some would call it out there, but we'll have to see. We'll be at props in just a minute here. Mark says, thoughts on Dylan Wu? I love him. So touched on him here a little bit, but let's look at the shots gained metrics, which is really what's getting me on Dylan Wu here. Let's find him. Come on. Oh, I have 2 U's there. That's why. Let's spell Wu right. All right. So in terms of shots gained metrics, right, he's gaining across the board. Doesn't look like he really stands out in any one category. But if you go to some of the advanced metrics on a lot of shots gained databases, he's gaining prolifically in the long iron ranges. In fact, he's top 70 in every range over 175 yards. So I like the ball striking fit, that's for sure. Thoughts on Ricky? He's been playing good. That's for damn sure. I think that's an understatement. I think a lot of people aren't giving him the credit he's deserved. He's gaining across the board. The iron play has been elite. It has been one of the best in the world over the last 36 rounds. You zoom in a little bit more, look at the last 12 measured rounds, still gaining a bunch on approach, but now gaining a bunch off the tee. Has started to hit a few more fairways. The putter has been there too. I think that he's a low-owned, really good play to get to in GPP contests. And it's a course that he's won at before. Has 2 top 4 finishes, a runner-up finish here around Quail Hollow. Absolutely loves this place. Travis is asking about Eric Cole, who's from my neck of the woods down here in South Florida. I don't love his off the tee play. I think that's the major concern for me. The form has been there. He proved to be wrong at Mexico. I didn't think he fit that course. He went out there, finished top 5. But yeah, it's the same story as last week. Like everything else looks great, right? 0.6 strokes on approach, 0.5 strokes with the putter. Just off the tee is a consistent loser, and then not the best long iron player. So we'll have to see. Maybe he'll prove me wrong again. I hope he does. He's like I said, he's from my neck of the woods. It wins a ton of mini tour events down here in South Florida. Alrighty, we're gonna talk through some props. So first off, for whatever reason, Underdog, anytime I post or enter a slip, they immediately bump my props. So I took under 4 birdies for Lowry, and I took under 4 birdies. Who was the other one? Brian Harmon was the other guy that I took. And within 30 seconds, I didn't even get to post them on Patreon. They bumped them down to 3.5. So we're probably going to avoid that site because they're acting a little bit childish over there in the trading room. But over here on Prize Picks, they're not immune themselves, right? They bumped down Corey Connors while we were live on stream here. But yeah, I liked his under at 72. Now that it's at 71.5, it's maybe not my favorite prop, but I did like Gary Woodland under 71.5. They bumped him down to 71 strokes. Big surprise, right? I liked Sahith under 71.5 strokes. They bumped that down to 71 strokes. Big surprise there too. So I guess that he is still my favorite prop on the board. But we'll look through the board here a little bit more, find some new stuff. Let's look at these fairway props because there were a few unders I took. And yeah, like clockwork, guys, everything's getting bumped that I post. I had the under 8 for Fowler and Cam Young, and now they're at 7.5. So all of these were posted on my Patreon. I know everyone on there was probably able to get those. We're going to have to find a few different props on here for the stream, which I'm more than okay with. So let me go ahead. I'm going to bring up my post on Patreon where I post some of the statistical averages for this week. And we'll find some stuff together. How's that sound here on stream? So let me bring that up. Let me share my screen and let's get it. All right. So this is a good little segue for me to plug my Patreon page here. But on there, of course, I post write-ups for the props that I'm taking. You can see, like I said, this is the card that I posted. I can show you it now, right? Because everything got bumped already. But up here's the stat averages that I really want to focus on. So we didn't have this event in 2022 because it was at TPC Potomac. You're just joining the live stream. The course from last year is not the same course as they're going to be playing this year. And the stat averages are going to be extremely different. They also did not play the event in 2020. So the stat averages that I'm pulling from here are in 2021 and then 2019. In 2021, the scoring average was 1.26 over par. Your winner was Rory McIlroy that year. Your birdie or better average was 3.19, so like 3.2 birdies per round. And your bogey average was 4 bogeys per round. I mean, that's pretty bad, right? And that's bogey or worse. So there's a bunch of double bogeys mixed in there. Down here with 2019, you had 3.19 birdies per round, the same exact birdie or better rate. That's worth noting. It's hard to have a closer average than we had over those 2 years there. And then the bogey average was 3.6. So for whatever reason, maybe it was lower winds, maybe it was more receptive greens. Kind of hard to say. I don't remember the whole way back to 2019. Even though I was there, I couldn't tell you the difference. And I was there for both events. I really couldn't tell you the difference between the conditions. They looked the same to me. But there was only 3.6 bogeys per round. So the scoring average was a little bit better, right? It was only 3/4 of a stroke over par. Your green and regulation average is 11. It's a 61.3% rate. Your fairway average is 7.56. And your whole 16 through 18 average, which is on Prize Picks, is a plus 0.8. So it'd be like an 11.8 for those 3 holes. So if you're looking at the averages on there, it's worth noting that they only have elite tier players up for holes 16 through 18. So the average for them would likely be a lot better than the 11.8 that you see for the field average. So with that being said, just wanted to give you guys the averages. Again, they're not on Data Golf. The ones that are on Data Golf are for TPC Potomac, which they played last year, and is a completely different course. Again, I know a lot of you know this, but I'm just mentioning it because I know for a fact, I've at least 10 people have made the mistake already this week that have already been asking me questions. Don't know that it's a different course. So just please keep that in mind. If you're looking at the two boards, I would say that Underdog is a lot more favorable towards these players than what Prize Picks is. On Underdog, their birdie numbers are higher. They're like 4.5 for like Finau, Cantlay, and stuff. They're at 4 on Prize Picks. Same thing with like Jordan Spieth. The strokes numbers are lower over there in Underdog, and with how benign the conditions are, like they look like perfect conditions there for tomorrow. It's been soft in the area. I like kind of agree with Underdog, but I'm not sure if I completely agree with them. Like it's going to be easier than most years, right? Like the scoring average is typically like 71.7 or even like 72 strokes for the par 71. I think I might play like closer to even par here for the first day, like especially before some of that weather comes in over the weekend. So for me, I understand why they're projecting guys to shoot like 2 under par, like a Rory McIlroy 1.5 under par for some of these other players. But why not just take them on Prize Picks, right? Where they're pricing it to be extremely difficult, right? Like they have guys priced over par. I mean, they had Corey Connors at 1 over par, and like he's like the prototypical build for this golf course. So I think you should try and focus your exposure on this side just to get an idea of a few props. I saw people taking the under on Ricky Fowler at 69.5 strokes. Now, the channel that did that, no beef, right? They're sponsored by Underdog, right? So they're not going to go over here and Prize Picks and talk up a prop. But if you're taking it under at 69.5, why not take the under at 71 strokes, right? At even par. So let's put that one in there. I don't hate that. Honestly, the under at 69.5, I kind of understand. He's a PMT time, so you don't love that. You ideally would like him to be in the morning, but I think it's solid value, especially considering some of the other pricing. I still don't hate this Corey Connors under. I got him at 72, but 71.5 still makes sense. Let's see. Let's find somebody in the morning we could take. There's Fitz there. There's Homa. Homa loves this course. Let's see. His last 5, right? He's kind of 50-50 on that, which makes sense, right? It's a difficult track. You're not going to see a bunch of like 4 or 5 or 5 of 5s for under strokes at a Quail Hollow. It's going to be a little bit volatile. Let's go with those two for now. Let's hop back over here to fairways. And I'll remind you, the average was 7.56. Way low, right? So for a guy like Ricky Fowler and Cameron Young, you could argue to still take their unders, which I'm not going to because I have them at 8, which is just such a better number than what you're getting there. But you could argue that because the average is there and they're well below average drivers when it comes to that accuracy. But let's see. Akshay's not very accurate off the tee. Like, he's a prime suspect for a fade at this point. I mean, those elite tier guys, they're probably priced right. They're 8.5. I understand it. Yeah, let's go with those 3 for right now over there on that. In terms of your whole 16 through 18, I think it's fairly priced. The average is an 11.8. So for these guys that are, elite tier players, they're probably projecting right around like an 11.5. Maybe like an 11.4. And they just added these to the board, which I didn't see before. They're holes played props, whether somebody makes the cut or not. It's a large field event, so the made cut average is actually relatively low this week. So I think there would be some fades to be had here. So let's see. Like a Ben Griffin's maybe not the best fit for this course. Maybe you take his under. What I would like to do, and what I'm going to do after, get off stream here, is I'm going to look at some of the sportsbook odds, the to make the cut odds for some of these players. And maybe shop some value on that end because Ben Griffin's kind of looking like a fade. I mean, Alex Noren, based on his off the tee stuff, might be a fade there. That would be the idea. But if I had to pick my top 3 props, what we're going to do for the sake of this live stream, it'd be these 3. The Fowler, even with the PMT time, I think 71 strokes is fair for somebody that loves this course, has been playing magnificent golf of late. Corey Connors, same thing. He's a morning tee time, though, so I like that. And then Akshay, similar to a few of the other fades I took at 8 that were already bumped down, not a very accurate driver. So priced above the field average, just it feels like a good spot of value. And yeah, you could do a flex, but I'd probably power play that if I was going with those 3 props. Let's check on chat. And if we don't have anything, we're hopping out of here. So let's see what's going on down there. You have a prop suggestion. Okay. Jason Day over 15 pars or better, second in bogey avoidance. Could see that. And then you have Fleetwood over birdie or better matchup. Let's take a look at the Fleetwood one. We'll circle back on the bogey props here in a second because honestly, I could see that too. I meant to look at that board. So let's see. Where's Fleetwood at? Tommy Ladd versus Monax. Okay. Let me look something up. We're going to bring up the birdie or better averages real quick and do a little bit of research on that because I have a feeling that's pretty close. And this is my go-to for this. So you can see how I research these birdie or better matchups. All right. Let me share my screen. I've got it up now. All right. So we got a birdie or better percentage up for the PGA Tour. Let's find Molnax. Molnax is number 146 on tour. Wow, I thought he was better than that. Okay. I think your bet's looking really good right now. And Fleetwood's 47? Yes. I love that bet. Spot on call there, man. So yeah, honestly, let's just put it on there for the sake of the stream there too. So if we wanted to make it 4-man, we could add him on there too. I don't love matchups, but when it's number 47 versus like number 140, gotta like it. Gotta like it, that's for sure. Then you said day with the bogey props. So yeah, with bogey props, I think they're a lot more favorable here on Prize Picks than what they are in Underdog. Underdog, you'd be fading them, right? Taking overs on bogeys because they have them at like 2.5. There's a few guys in here that you could take the overs for pars. So Sunjay M stood out. He's at 15. He's that same kind of player. So if you were going to take Jason Day, I think you'd have to go to Sunjay M too, because in terms of bogey avoidance, he's one of the best players on tour. Yeah, and that's probably it though, because a lot of the other guys here aren't the best bogey avoiders. And the guys that are here at 14.5 are kind of known for making bogeys. So yeah, I don't hate it at all. In fact, actually, I like this Sunjay M one a little bit more. So I think if you were going to take it, I might slightly side in that direction personally. But I like the way that you're thinking there, man. Thoughts on Connors and Gordon from a ball striking fit? Love both. Long off the tee for Gordon, both relatively accurate there too. Love them both. Best 3.5 birdie props on Prize Picks. I didn't bet any of them. So the average for birdies are better, which I brought up here before. It's 3.2. So for elite tier players, it's probably close to like 3.7, 3.8. So I understand, shading towards overs. Just not my favorite props. I want to see the course first. I think a lot of it comes down to pin locations, and I haven't deep dived the pins yet. Unless they're relatively soft, unless it's looking like they're, it's going to be a relatively easy round, I'm probably avoiding those. Cam Young over 4 birdies, or Tom Kim over 3.5 birdies. I could see the Tom Kim one. He's at 3.5 on Prize Picks too, and he's a PMT time. So I would probably fade that. But yeah, you shade towards the over, right? If you were going to put a gun to my head and tell me to pick the prop, of course it would be an over. Over there with Cam Young, he's another PMT time. I think I might wait for him on Friday. So I might wait for Cam Young Friday morning. Hopefully he's at 4 birdies or better. I'd probably take the over then. I would just wait for maybe the optimal conditions for good old Cam Young. Will you be able to be found on hole 6 this Friday? If I go up there, I'm not sure if I'm going to come up. I've been thinking about it. I told you guys I was a little bit tempted about it, but we'll see. I think it depends on how the first 2 days go. If Spieth, JT, maybe Rory McIlroy end up getting into contention, I might make my way up there for Saturday and Sunday, but I won't be there Friday. If anything, I'll be there for the weekend. This guy is cracking me up. This, that, and the other thing. Young says, "What's your thought on Ricky versus Ben Griffin?" So it's another matchup, especially since you just said it's not a good fit for Griffin. Is that one of the matchups on Prize Picks? You guys know I don't love these matchups, but if that's actually a matchup, I don't hate it. It is. Let's take a look at the birdie or better numbers, right? So Ricky, I know he's had a good year, so he's let's find the actual Ricky. 10. He's number 10 on tour in birdie or better. Did not know that. Okay. And then I know Ben Griffin's nowhere close to number 10. 31. Hey, way better than I thought for Ben Griffin. But yes, I like that too. That's for sure. Blake likes the Fleetwood over 3.5. I couldn't blame you. Let's see. What's his average per round? I think it's like 4.1. Yeah, it's like 4.1 birdies per round. Not the worst pick. I considered fading him on Underdog at 4, but when I looked up his metrics, the birdie or better number was a little bit better than I thought, than I was giving him credit for, so I avoided it. So yeah, I don't hate it at 3.5. You need to take more notice of this and get your restaurant recommendations. Yeah, for the weekend, I'll let you guys know tomorrow for the live stream we're doing for round 2, which will be tomorrow evening around like 8:30 p.m. I'll let you know if I'm heading up there. Love your fellow Oklahoma alum. Let's go Victor and Ricky. Yeah, I'm for it too. I have both in my poll. I think it's a good setup for both. Either way, guys, that is all I've got for this live stream. Appreciate all the support you guys show me here on the channel. Smash that like button on the way out. Subscribe if you haven't already to this, so you don't miss any of the content in the future, right? Unless you want to miss it, right? If you want to miss it, then don't subscribe. That's okay. But if you want to be tuned in, then you guys know what to do. But either way, best of luck with those lineups. Any of those bets that you go with, I bet all 4 of my core plays this week, and pretty much kept it at that. A few guys that I might add for a few dollars here tonight. But it's a top heavy field. I think somebody 30 or 1, 30 to 1, probably even like 25 to 1 or better is going to end up winning this golf tournament. So personally, that's the way that I'm shading. But like I said, should be a fun event. I might be up there for the weekend. You guys will know firsthand what's going on there. But if so, you'll have some boots on the ground for Saturday and Sunday, and might be a ball of a weekend to be had. But like I said, best of luck, and I'll catch you guys for that showdown stream tomorrow.